Mayor Perkins, welcome to Baton Rouge.
Happy to be here, man. I love it.
So tell me, man, you have had a interesting journey. I've had the opportunity to have a few conversations with you now, and just really wanted to talk to you about your experience, right, as an individual, because, you know, we look at mayors, right, because you're the mayor of Shreveport, the third largest city in the state of Louisiana. You are 35 years old.
Fresh 35, fresh 35.
Because we just discovered that, so we're like 2 months apart. And I just think it's awesome to see a young black man ascending, right? And want to discover more about what motivated you to be involved in politics, right? But, you know, who is Adrian Perkins?
So that's a good question. But I'll tell you one thing now, I just want to touch on it. The authority of being a mayor, you know, that's one thing, and people respect it. They're like, man, you're a young mayor. But a lot of times people forget the symbolism of being a young mayor as well, and what symbols that sends to people that grew up like me. You know what I mean? The fact that it shows what possibilities lie out there despite what neighborhood you come from. So in answering the central question of who is Adrian Perkins, I'm a Louisiana boy, just like, you know, a lot of the men in this state. I grew up, born and raised here, was born in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Shreveport, was raised by a single mother. So when I'm talking about policies, or whenever I'm implementing policies as the mayor of Shreveport, I have that perspective. It ain't nothing I watched on CNN or, you know, I read in a book. These are lived experiences that I'm administering government through. So yeah, I'm one with the people. That's who I am. But
you have had a different road, right, than the average black kid from Cedar Grove.
Yes, absolutely.
So
I beat the statistics a bit.
So tell me, you know, I'm a 35-year-old from North Baton Rouge, right? That is the equivalent to what Cedar Grove is in Shreveport, right? What was it like going from your neighborhood to West Point?
Yeah, it was like jumping into, it's like jumping on a spaceship, honestly. It's a complete different world. And that's what it was like even when I visited West Point, to go and see like the pristine uniforms and this beautiful campus, and I didn't know anything about it. I really didn't know. I knew it was a place that presidents visited, but you know, in North Baton Rouge, you hear West Point, it's just this alien thing to you. You don't quite grasp it. So yeah, it was like jumping on a spaceship. It was a completely different world. And I knew one thing that really stood out to me about my visit though, I knew that if I went there, it would open up doors for me that I didn't even know about. You know what I mean? And my mom has this saying, she says, if you want to tell God a joke, tell him what you have planned. And I knew that God was at work with it because it was something that I didn't even know about. And the opportunities that would open would only be something that he would be granting me. It would be something that I was designing myself, you know what I mean?
So what was your plan?
Man, my plan was to stay here. I was gonna go to school in Louisiana. I was gonna run track. I was gonna be an engineer or an architect. And 9/11 happened when I was a junior in high school, and that changed everything for me.
What did it do for you?
So that morning, man, a teacher barged into the classroom and told my teacher, like whispered some of my teacher's ear. She ran over to the TV, turned it on, and like everybody was afraid. You know, we were watching the Trade Centers burn, and I got home that night and my family was afraid, like, man, we don't know what's gonna happen. So I made a commitment that morning that I was gonna protect my family, I was gonna protect my community. So it, like I said, it changed everything.
So you decided that you were going to go into the military that day?
That day.
And why was West Point the path?
Because West Point was recruiting me for track.
Got it.
So that's where I kind of was like, okay, well, I can still go and get a college education, and I can go and protect, you know, my family, protect this country.
So you go to West Point, you become the head of
class president.
Class president, right? And you're like the first black class president to graduate, am I right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, which is wild and not planned once again. I didn't know much about West Point, so I said, if I'm class president of high school, I might as well do it at West Point.
Okay, so you just been jumping the run like since you got out the gate.
Yeah. I mean, it was something I enjoyed in high school, and I saw that I could help people, and I was like, I'll do the same thing at West Point.
So what was the experience like? You know, being that this is not something black folks have sat into, did you feel a different responsibility? Was it something that was more pressure? What was it?
I think after the academy, it kind of dawned more of like you have a larger platform because you held this position. When I was at the academy, it was only 6% black, by the way. So it wasn't many of us around, and my classmates treated me pretty equally there, to be honest with you. But after I left, when people heard that I was the first black class president, you know, to graduate, I realized, hey, I got a much larger platform and a much larger responsibility to black people.
The responsibility, right, that you carry from your previous role at West Point, and I want to go to Harvard, right? So you go from West Point to Harvard, and then you become the president of
student body at Harvard.
So you just gonna be the president everywhere you go, right?
Hey, if I'm gonna offer myself up, right? If my peers say that, hey, you know, you should be leading, then I'm gonna jump in. Never did I run without people saying, hey, you should definitely run for this office, or you should run for this position. So, you know, if I know that I can have an impact and I can help people around me, then, you know, I'm gonna offer myself.
So you're ambitious.
Ambitious, I mean, that, people probably can describe it as ambition. I like to describe it as if there's an opportunity to help, I'll help.
But there's nothing wrong with ambition though, right?
No, I don't think so. I think ambition is more, I think it hints at it's something inside of me that wants to get somewhere, right?
But even if my ambition is service, right? If I desire to serve, and I guess, and this kind of leads to the conversation we were having off camera, that as young people, you know, going after something is not wrong.
Yeah, not at all.
Right?
Absolutely not.
And in your position, you have checked off some boxes along the way, but I guess, you know, for the average black person, right, that's watching this, and Harvard might not mean anything, and West Point might not mean anything, but your hunger to help people, where did that come from?
My mother. And just going back, I'll tell you, I am very ambitious to help people. With that condition on it, you're absolutely right. It's never been described like that, but I agree. If you put that condition on it, I am ambitious with it. And the reason being is because the environment that I come from, I know a lot of people need help. And you talk about my motivation is my mom. My mom, I watched my mom raise me and my two older brothers from the time I was 3 years old by herself. My mom worked a job where she made around $30,000 a year. Essentially, we were like the working poor. She had to work multiple jobs to feed us. And even while I watched my mom work these 2 jobs, and she would pick me up from school and take me to clean office buildings with her at night, man, it was still nights when we didn't have enough food for everybody. So my mom would kind of creep away from the dinner table, not eating much, so me and my brothers could have something. And my mom was like a superstar in our neighborhood, you know what I mean? So I knew there were families that were doing even worse than what we were. I had friends whose parents were hooked on drugs and, you know, didn't have a job at the electric company like my mother had, or didn't have the capacity to get hired to 2 jobs. So, and watching my mom work completely selflessly just for me and my brothers, that was a pretty powerful thing to observe at a young age. But also knowing that people are hurting in that environment, and a lot of it is no fault of theirs, right? You know, they're born into these systems, into these cycles that places them at such a disadvantage that they cannot climb out of it. So if you talk about motivation and inspiration, my mom is my inspiration, but my motivation is knowing how many people are still stuck in that same situation in which I grew up in.
So, and I'm walking it all the way up to you being mayor intentionally. So, class president in high school, class president at West Point, class president at Harvard, and then you run for mayor while you're still in law school?
Yes, so I was a 3rd year law student. A point in between, I want to point this out. So let me say this. West Point is a very conservative institution if people don't know this. Military institution, military typically leans a little bit right. In between West Point and Harvard, 8 years in the military though. 8 years in the military, leading in the military. I was a platoon leader when I was 23 years old. So one thing I told people when I was running for mayor is this ain't my first rodeo. You know, I've been leading people under life and death circumstances and managing millions of dollars of property and equipment since I was 23. Military career culminated when I was 28 in Afghanistan. I was over 200 people at that point, so a lot of responsibilities.
What was war like for you?
What you would think it is. You know, you lose friends, you get shot at, you get, people shoot. You're always under attack in that environment. You're always under attack, but there's a double burden for leaders in that environment, because I'm not just trying to keep myself safe or the person in the foxhole with me to my left and my right. Like I've had, my first leadership opportunity, I was 23 and I had 30 people I was responsible for. So I had to make sure that planning was right, that they were prepared, that they were trained up. And I had to look their families in the face before we deployed and tell them, hey, I'm gonna do everything that I can to get your loved one back home safe. Imagine doing it at 23. That's a lot of responsibility to have at such a young age. And what's funny now, you talk about ambition, what's funny now is nobody ever called me ambitious when I stepped up to be in the military. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They were like, absolutely, they encouraged me.
Go put your life on the line.
Yeah, they encouraged me. They were like, absolutely, I'm proud of you, you're doing the right thing. So having people question my motivations now that once again, I see my community under attack and I want to help. Yeah, it's a bit of irony in that to me.
You said something, you said always under attack. That's kind of like politics too.
It is, it is, it is.
It's kind of like politics.
Absolutely.
And so serving or running to be the mayor of Shreveport, a 60% black city, what does it feel like to be the mayor and then the responsibility of the job, right?
You know what, I describe being the mayor of my hometown like this to people. You know how you grow up and you look at your parents and you think that you love them to death and you think they're perfect because they know all about the world and they can answer all the questions that you have. But then when you get older, you're like, man, my parents ain't that perfect. These are some human beings too, right? But you love them. You still love them, and you love them in a very different way, in a deeper way, because you know more about them. And that's how it is being the mayor of my hometown. I grew up in my hometown and I saw the environment I was growing up with, but I saw all these community members coming to help me out. Deacons at the church, making sure I was wearing a belt, pants was up, I was always walking the straight and narrow. The teachers that stayed after class to make sure I got whatever concepts I didn't get. So I had this very naive view of Shreveport. I would say I was missing some information growing up and I loved it. But then I came back and I started to campaign and I started to get these political shots and I started realizing, what life was like on both sides of the track, East Shreveport, West Shreveport. And that changed the dynamic of my love for my hometown. So I still love it. And I'm still doing everything that I can every single day. It's just a different love than what I had growing up. And I think this is a deeper love that I have for it. And it drives me to want to do even more for it, to want to protect it even more, to even want to put it on a better path.
So what are the things that you've discovered are major needs for like black mayors, right? Like, because, one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation and, the introductions are necessary so that people know who Adrian is, right? But the meat and potato of black leadership and what we need, right? What is it that, like, when you become mayor, you discover what a budget looks like for this city, right? And then how limited resources are to make all of these things happen. What has that role been like for you? And how have you navigated that?
That was very challenging at first, I'll be honest. A lot of leadership principles transcend whatever job you're in, right? Being a leader that people respect, that people know is competent, being a leader that leads from the front and you'll never ask your people to do something that those type of things will go into any career path, any sector that you're in. The administrative piece that you just talked about, the scale jump was something that I had to learn because I went from military company commander of 200 to mayor boss of 3,000. City budget, operating budget of $220 million. My executive staff, a dozen people. So that was a huge management shift that I had to learn, and I worked my butt off. I was working 18, 20-hour days at the beginning to get a grasp of it.
Do you think people realize how much goes into being mayor?
Not at all. Not at all. I was on the campaign trail studying everything that was publicly available about being a mayor, and extremely diligently, but I had no idea until you actually sit in that seat, because there are things you can't read about that you have to carry that burden as the mayor. I had a police officer killed with her child by her fiance, with her child in the house, the first week I was in office, and I had to deliver remarks at her funeral with that 2-year-old baby on the front pew. You don't read about that. You know, those things you don't read about, those type of leadership moments you can't even prepare for.
Policing as a mayor, right? What have you realized about the relationship between, you know, our community and the police?
Yeah, that the years, the decades of division and separation and that lack of connection hasn't gone anywhere. And if you don't have an executive, if you don't have a mayor that's committed to bridging that gap, then things are only going to get worse. This isn't a problem that will solve itself. You have to work every single day to bridge that divide between law enforcement and the black community, and law enforcement and the community at large. And your community will not truly be as safe as it can be until you've bridged that divide. And that's what we did in year one. I talked about community-oriented policing all the time. I made sure I was leading from the front with it with my police chief. We would go out on patrol with our officers and made sure they were getting to know the people in the neighborhood. Not out there writing tickets, not out there just arresting, but actually talking to the grandmother that's sitting on the porch, or the grandmother that's peeking through the blinds all day long and knows what's going on in her neighborhood more than anybody else. Building that relationship, building a relationship with the kids in the street. Safest year in Shreveport in 45 years, because we focused every single day on bridging that gap. That tough on crime, that stuff does not work. That does not work, and we've seen it. We truly have to pursue community-oriented policing if we want our communities to be safe overall. I tell people, I got 500 police officers, and I'd rather have the 200,000 sensors of my citizens. And we're much safer when all of our citizens are involved in those 500 police officers. There's no way they can keep everybody safe.
So, as an executive, you know, you have to navigate bringing in jobs, right? You have to navigate public safety. You have to navigate administrative roles, right? What do you think makes a mayor be able to pull those things together successfully, right? Because you've been there a short period of time, but you've done some things, right? So what helped you pull those things together and talk about those things?
Yeah, the team around, well, first of all, you got to have a vision. If you're in that seat, you got to have a vision.
Come on,
of
somebody,
where you wanna,
can we talk about a vision? Can we be going somewhere? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's like one of the things that's bothered me about leadership, right?
Yeah.
Like when you recognize that people don't know where they're going, right? Like, and then expect everybody else to just, you know, to come along. But where we going?
Yeah, you got to paint that picture. You got a vision in your head. One thing clearly, you have to articulate a picture for your citizens to know this is where we are going. So you got to have a vision, and then with that vision, you got to have a strong team around you that very much understands that vision, because that allows them to do their jobs better. It empowers them. And as a mayor, you cannot micromanage. You do not have the time, especially in a strong mayor form of government where you're responsible for that vision and the administration of government. So when you have that vision, you have a strong team around you, and then you have to start measuring your success and your movement.
So what's
to let
those
people know? So I tell you, so I ran on a platform of public safety. I said we have to make Shreveport safer in order for us to get any of these opportunities that we're talking about. It starts with the safety of our people. And then the second thing was economic development, opportunities. We need to make sure that everyone in this city has opportunities no matter which side of the tracks you're on. And that was huge, because in Shreveport there is a huge disparity in capital, just like there is in America with the black community. The black community does not have much capital in Shreveport. So I said we need to create opportunities where everybody can benefit. And then the third thing was technology and how we can upgrade Shreveport bring it into the 21st century, and we can use technology to make the community safer and to create opportunities. So in drawing that vision, you know, on our city and where we were going, what we accomplished in the first year with opportunity, I'll give you an example. Nobody was talking about technology in Shreveport before I ran. As a matter of fact, people were laughing at me and they were like, you need to take that off of your campaign material. It's just not gonna happen here. But we were able to attract tech jobs. We were able to attract, you know, enough tech jobs to where tech was one of the fastest growing industries in Shreveport, and it helped us get our unemployment rate down to 3.9%, which was, you know, one of the historical low numbers for us. But if you're not having that conversation, if you don't have that vision, and you're just like, all right, I'm just gonna manage us where we are, then you're never gonna move forward and people are gonna stay exactly where they are. And again, my motivation is to create opportunities for people, to make sure that I'm helping out people, the most vulnerable of us, the people that are still in Cedar Grove, so that they can have jobs to where they can take care of feed their children, take care of their children, and their children too can go to West Point or LSU or Southern or wherever they wanna go. But that's not our society as it is now. So that's kind of the way that I've focused things, and we've been able to accomplish some things. But COVID-19 has changed a lot of it.
So talk about opportunities, contracts for Black-owned businesses in Shreveport.
Absolutely.
The work you've done into that.
Yeah. So we broke the record, the previous record for contracts to Black businesses in Shreveport.
We like to hear it.
Yeah, we were around 13%. We did a bunch of research to figure out what was the high. We have a fair share department that studies these things. They're supposed to be the ones that advise the mayor and facilitate us meeting our goal of 25% in receipts. Well, the previous record was 13%, and the previous person that ran that department had been there for 18 years.
With a maximum of 13%.
With a maximum, and so I asked her in the interview, I was like, is this it? Like, can you show me more? But that was it. In our first year, we got up to 20%. And Quinn Eubanks was my fair share director, who's from Baton Rouge, by the way. Worked at the state. Yeah, shout out to Baton Rouge. Yeah, Quinn Eubanks led us 20%. And I'm like, if you can do that in 1 year, then why haven't we been doing it? And let me tell you, I was sitting in staff meetings, and I started making my department heads report where they were every month, because I refused to get to the end of the fiscal year and they say, oh, Mayor, I'm just too far away. I can't get there. So I made them report every month. And if I saw them falling behind, I would ask them why. And I would hold them accountable right there. But if you don't have an executive that prioritizes making sure that disadvantaged businesses, whether minority, whether you're talking about women, whether you're talking about veteran businesses, if you don't have an executive that prioritizes that, it will fall by the wayside.
So for the Black entrepreneur, right, that's important.
Yeah.
Because for so long, we've been paying taxes into local economies that don't do business with our firms, right? And so programs like the Fair Share program are created, but if we don't have an executive in position with the willpower to like force that, nah, this is not acceptable, right? And could you imagine that white folks lived in a community where Black people made 98% of the money from their tax dollars and they would be okay with it?
Yeah, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen.
And I think when a Black, have you had like a struggle trying to convince people that this is right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got crushed. The city of Shreveport, we have insurance policies and we pay advisors to get our insurance for our employees and various things. The city of Shreveport had never allowed an African American to participate, and these are hundreds of thousands of dollars in these contracts, right? I did the exact same thing that mayors had done for over 30 years in picking out a minority firm to give away 8% of that work so that we could actually have African Americans participate in that space and build capacity in that space.
8%.
8%, not anywhere near 25%. Look up the reports on it. So the African American is somebody that it's somebody that knew my campaign manager. He was related to my campaign manager, but this is the thing that they never report. He was the only person in the city of Shreveport that had a license to do municipal insurance work. The only one. So if you're in a
Black
city,
or white?
Black. Yeah, black.
No, I mean the only one black.
No.
Only
Only
was the only black.
Only
Okay.
African American. So if you're in a city and you're trying to build capacity for African Americans in that city,
And he's the only person.
one.
Got it.
So they made it seem like a nepotism thing, rather than it being a capacity problem. They didn't. The media didn't address the real problem that we have in Shreveport.
And I'm so glad you used the word capacity, because that is often like the hurdle, right? Where they say this firm does not have the capacity or the experience.
Yeah.
But then who sets the rules, right? Right? So you're a strong form mayor, right? But you still have a council that you have to go through, and council set the rules, right?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we get lost on this push for voting because we focus so much on the presidential election.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get to you running for U.S. Senate, right?
Yeah.
But where the rubber meets the road is where your mayor, your city council, and the policies and the budgetary potential that they create, right? And who is that potential created for? Right? And if we don't have black executives, right, with a vision, how do we go from 13 to 19%? You know, or are we just satisfied with the status quo? You know?
That's why, so representation, we can circle all the way back to the beginning of the speech. There's two parts of it. You got the administrative piece, and then you got the symbolic piece. We don't want to just settle for one and not the other. Representation is important. It is very good to see African Americans in every part. But it's not enough. And we have to be able to watch what they are doing and holding them accountable to where when they get through these doors, they are keeping it open so that everybody can participate.
Do you think that people recognize the wins enough? Like being in the position as mayor, right? Like, because it's so easy to criticize what you don't like. But as a young black mayor, right, do you feel like people, because that's a big deal, right? 13% to 19%. So if you're a black entrepreneur in Shreveport, that tells me that you have hope for your company to have the potential to do business, because in a city that's 60% black, let's be honest, we should be over 50% of the contracts, but capacity is an issue. Right?
Yeah, I don't think we celebrate the wins enough, because oftentimes we don't know about them, right? Like, even with me going up to 20%, that's still not thousands of African-American people that their lives have been changed. They have access to enough capital. That's why, we have to continue to push towards that goal and beyond that goal. So that's one thing. They don't realize it because the scale is still quite small. And honestly, I'm doing that. Our GDP in Shreveport is about $16 billion a year. So I have $200-some million. I'm trying to also send symbols out to the private sector to say, you too should be accomplishing this. So I think the scale is small for everybody to benefit, but also another thing I believe is that we want to see government really change our individual life, and just seeing your neighbor or somebody down the street is still too far off. You know what I mean? And then you got stories in the media that's like, oh, well, you got to know somebody. And that's not the case. The case is watching progress and continuing to push that progress until it visits your door, or until it visits your neighbor's door, your neighborhood's door, and your neighborhood starts to be uplifted. And we don't talk about that enough.
So for me, right, I have not been the benefactor of a bunch of government contracts, okay? But I, through my advocacy, have pushed more black people into contract opportunities, because black businesses hire black employees typically, who then have the ability to earn a fair or a living wage, right? And if we are going to be progressive for our people, we got to create jobs. We do. Right? Like we have to have more black entrepreneurs. We've got to be competitive, right? We've got to stand up first-class businesses. But we also then, I always hear this phrase, and I think this is I get your perspective on it. We always say somebody sold out, right? Mm-hmm. But the question is, are we buying our politicians? Right? Yeah. Who are we, like, as a community, putting our money behind, right? When you ran for office, Now, and I know this because I ran for office. Because I ran for office, right? And when I ran for office, now the majority of the people who supported my campaign were black, right? But I also did not raise a lot of money, okay? And had I raised another $50,000, $60,000, then I would have had the ability to mail, right? I would have had the ability to be on TV more or radio more to get my message out, right? Because politics costs money. Nobody's putting you on TV for free. Nobody's putting your ads out there for free. But we talk about who sold out, but are we buying our leadership? Are we putting our money up to say, I want to see my guy get elected?
I'll tell you a very unique part of the story. I didn't quite talk much about, I was a third-year law student when I was running for mayor. We didn't get to that question, but I'll tell you, one thing that made me a very unique candidate in Shreveport was this. The first $80,000 that I raised, I didn't raise it from within Shreveport. I raised it from my Harvard network, from my West Point network, from my military network. So when I walked into the room with people that were big donors that doesn't look like us, I could immediately say, I'm telling you, I cannot be bought. If your support for me comes with any strings that's detrimental to me, to my city, or to anybody, I can't do it. I'm not your candidate. And then we could have a conversation about why they were supporting me or what their interests were, and we can move forward from there. A lot of us don't have that latitude when we walk into these rooms because we're trying to win. And we think, oh, okay, on the other side of it, then I could do some good. But you don't want to walk in with them strings attached to you. So that gave me a lot of latitude and to be very different. So when I was knocking on Medea's door, I could just ask her for her support. And if she could give me $5, then great. That's phenomenal. You know, I really appreciate this. But I didn't necessarily need to really get that funding from us. Because if you do have to depend on our community, we don't have, I think that's another area financially, we don't have the wherewithal or the capital. Let's just be honest. We don't have the same
capacity
amount
and the
of money.
So I'm gonna push back on that because, you know, we have trillions of dollars in spending power as black people, but it's what we do with those dollars, right? And so I'm not gonna agree that we may not be able to cut $2,500 checks, right? We may not be able to max out on the Senate campaign, but we can get 10, 20 other people to jump in and do $50 and $100 with us. Oh yeah, right?
And we see that. No, I absolutely.
But we need to see that for you now.
Yeah,
yeah. We need to see that for you now.
Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing is a young black man who is the mayor of the third largest city in the state of Louisiana, who's running for U.S. Senate, who has raised over $2 million already to beat Bill Cassidy, who's Trump's boy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out, how do I get Medea, T. Francis, right? Uncle Joe and everybody else in our network to go ahead and support you in this Senate race, because at the end of the day, if we're not betting on us, if we're not putting our money up behind us, then we are asking other people to fund our future.
Yeah, and you got to be, well, first of all, let me commend Medea and Auntie, the ones that have given. We got over 50,000 contributions in this election that allowed us to break. And it is because Senator Cassidy hadn't had over 50,000 contributions since this started. This entire campaign cycle started in 2015. That lets you know that he's taking crazy amounts of corporate PAC dollars, and you can see it from pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies. That's why he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. So this is truly a people power campaign. Our average contribution is about $40. So like I said, a lot of our aunties and stuff are contributing, but to the scale that you would imagine with what's at stake, we're not quite there yet. So not only am I out there talking to black voters about voting and the importance of voting, and the importance of, hey, we need your support, contribute to the campaign. But I'm also educating them just like you are in this moment and saying we have to be investing in our own elected officials as well, or they're gonna be beholden to other people. And there's gonna be them strings attached to those.
And that's a fact. And see, to me, I think that's where, so I get perturbed by all of the people with the whole, don't vote, and you know, like, first of all, most of the people telling you not to vote with these big platforms, they can afford not to vote, okay? Yeah. They make enough money that regardless of what the government does, that they will be okay.
They're insulated.
Right? They can move to somewhere else. They can opt to go to another country if they want to, right? But for those of us who live in Cedar Grove or North Baton Rouge, who need to make sure that public transportation is running on time, who need to make sure that if there's a drainage issue in my community, right, that there's a mayor or a council member that can deal with those issues, that there's a senator when there's a pandemic, right, that cares about the humanity of black people in the state of Louisiana, rather than, you know, just sitting and going along with whatever Trump and his goons push, right? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And at some point, like, we got to confront that with facts, right? And if we wanted to be more impactful for all the rich black celebrities, where's a camera? For all the rich black celebrities, right, with all these resources and money, that if you were putting money behind people like Adrian Perkins, putting money behind people like Jamie Harrison, putting money behind people like Raphael Warnock, right, then we could turn the ship around, because we would have a black senator in the U.S. Senate to fight for us. But currently, we got 3, okay? So we got Kamala from California, we got Corey from New Jersey, and we got Tim from South Carolina, right? And you can throw Tim out because he with Trump. Right?
Yeah.
So if that's the deck we dealing with as black people in America, we need an Adrian Perkins, right? We need you to go from being the mayor of Shreveport to the U.S. Senate because of the power of the office, right? Somebody to be a vote to check this Amy Barrett judge, Amy Comey Barrett, right? Who's from Louisiana too, right? Right? Like, can we send some of the cleanup crew with all the trash that keeps going up?
Yeah, yeah. I want to. You just.
I'm sorry.
I really think. No, I appreciate it, because you made me think though. Your passion made me think about it this way. I don't know if you've been watching, but Mike Espy, the candidate in Mississippi, has been talking about the lack of support that he got from the Democratic Party and the DSCC and a lot of the institutions around the Democratic process, or the Democratic Party, because he says he's in the South and they write off the South and they write off black candidates.
And 55% of black folks live in the deep South.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. Yeah. Okay?
Yeah, Mississippi is the most populated state.
And Louisiana is the second
most. Exactly. So I don't know if you watched it, but as soon as Mike started being very vocal, so he has recently gotten a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of attention by doing it. But I was thinking about the civil rights movement and who powered the civil rights movement. A lot of the famous black people at the time, and I don't know many famous, I'm just a boy from Shreveport, Louisiana. A lot of famous black people are the ones that contributed money to those people that got on buses and took buses down south and did the sit-ins, and they were the ones. A lot of the black-owned businesses, the beauty shops, the barbershops, they also were funneling money, and we were funding
because
the interests of our community.
We had systems and structures and we understood the collective sacrifice needed to progress, right? That if I don't put you there, then all of the things that we want to see happen for us, and it makes no sense, right? Like, we live in the second blackest state in America, and there's not a single black person elected statewide. But you've raised more money as a black candidate probably than any black candidate that's running statewide, right?
Yeah, we actually broke a record for the campaign that raised $1 million the fastest, faster than anybody, black or white, in the state of Louisiana.
So that's like the bigger, and I'm so glad we're at this point in the conversation, because I really feel like that's where the rubber meets the road for our advocacy as voters, as people talking to these celebs, as influencers. Like, if you are a celebrity with influence and power and you haven't cut a check to Mike Espy, to Adrian Perkins, to Raphael Warnock, right? What's the sister in Tennessee that's running?
Marquita. Bradshaw.
Marquita Bradshaw in Tennessee. If you have not cut checks to these people, you ain't serious. Like that.
I can't say that, Gary.
You can't, but I can. right?
Yeah,
Here, if we are going to create change, it's not going to just happen in the wind. It's not going to just happen because we didn't vote. Like, our ancestors literally gave everything that they could to have these rights, right? Your grandfather was a sharecropper, right?
Bossier Parish.
And to come from a sharecropper to the potential of a mayor, right? And then the capacity to potentially be a United States senator, there's power in that.
A lot of work from him, a lot of work my mom had to put in, a lot of work I have had to put in. It's been continual work, and that's exactly what we have to do as a community. If we want to climb out of our situation, we got to put in the work constantly, day in, day out, and we got to push towards what we want. Sitting back is not the answer. And if anybody is telling you to sit back and things gonna work out, they're lying to you. It's not gonna happen that way.
So here's the challenge. If you think that a black leader who took the city that he was representing from 13% contracting with disadvantaged businesses to 20, if you feel like somebody who made their city the safest in 45 years, if you feel like somebody who went to West Point, Harvard, been class president everywhere he went is the real deal, then tweet about this man, right? Then tag people and talk about Adrian Perkins. Then go on to adrianperkins.com and cut a check, swipe your debit card, make a contribution to help this brother win because we have an opportunity.
Yeah, adrianperkins.com will reroute you. Perkins for LA is the Senate campaign, but if you go to adrianperkins.com, it'll reroute you to
Perkins4LA.com and make a contribution to this campaign, because for me, these conversations are not just about, what did you do, but where are we going, right? And what can we do collectively if we're going to be a part of these conversations, if we're going to create change in our communities. It's not going to happen from people. People know me because I went to a school board meeting and roasted Connie, right? But people also don't know that I've raised money for candidates running for office, right? They don't know that I've written speeches for people who are running for office to make sure that when you step out there that you represent us, and you represent us in truth, and you represent us well, because all of this stuff requires a machine and an apparatus. They don't see your team off camera right now, right? That is moving around with you to help you accomplish this goal. But we are listening to people on the internet that don't do this work, right? When we really need to be putting our collective resources behind folks like you so that we can go to another level of an executive, right? And so that you can go up there and take some other young black folks up to DC with you, right? That can go and create some change.
Absolutely.
Well, brother, I am appreciative of your ambition as a young black ambitious man.
Thank you.
Right? That we need more people when the question is asked, who will go? That somebody will say, send me. Right? That we will have people who answer the call and put in the work, man. So
I'm doing it every day. You better believe it. I'm doing it every day.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. As always, people, do good, seek justice, and keep pushing.